Hello and welcome to another episode of the djproject Criterion Collection. And in this episode, we're going to talk about Spine 54 for All Mankind, directed by Reinert, 1989. This Criterion actually, I said that I was going to present these all in Spine order because there's no way that I could remember exactly when exactly I purchased certain discs, and sometimes I even purchase two discs at the same time. So the question is, okay, well, how do I order that? But I can tell you that this one is actually my 100th Criterion that I purchased, and it was one of those great timing moments. It was during its DVD reissue 2009 that came out in 2009. This was originally issued in 2000, and when I saw the film, I really loved it, but I was waiting. I had this feeling that there could have been a better transfer looming, and sure enough, it was reissued in 2009, and I think subsequently thereafter it was issued on Blu-ray as well. And it was just really great timing. Actually, it was reissued around the time of the 40th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission. So good timings all around. This film, I usually like. I watch it. I try to watch it on July 20th or very close to July 20th. But I just revisited this just last night, interestingly, as an attempt to try to cure insomnia. But the timing of it was really good. By the time it ended, I could see dawn outside my window, so you could see this blue sky and emerging and the emerging of the sun, and so it was a great timing to see that while you're watching the end of it, which has. This is the documentary that has Brian Eno's music. Most of it from Apollo Atmospheres and Soundtracks, and then there's some other tracks that were on that ended up being on Music for Films 3. But to hear an ending ascent while the dawn is going outside, I thought it was just really, really great. But typically I watch this around July 20th, and in seeing this, I think, all right, there really isn't such a thing as a perfect film. There's always going to be there's always going to be flaws. There's always going to be some mistakes. I mean, some mistakes are more minor than others, and if this has any mistakes, they're very minor. But I think this is the closest you're going to get to a perfect film, where everything works beautifully, and I think what makes this even more extraordinary is that this all happened. This was all comprised of footage that was shot by NASA in various ways, documenting the Apollo mission, it's all in the editing. It's all in the presentation. And it does something that I think Al Reiner talks about this quite a bit, that what it did for its time when it was made was that it reintroduced a much needed human element. It was definitely understood in well, that's a little bit unfair to say, but to him, what was advertised a lot in the Apollo moon missions were basically there was political motivations. We got to beat the Russians to the moon, and there was also there was a scientific ambition. I mean, apart from the fact of, hey, let's see if we can actually do this. Let's see if we can try to send some men up to the moon and have them return safely to the Earth. But there was also geological motivation for it as well. Just looking at 4 billion-year-old rock samples, it would give you some idea of the origin of the Earth, the origin of the solar system. And so there were things that drove us to do it, but I think what was kind of lost in the shuffle, although I think more people probably sense this intuitively, but I guess it really needed to be confirmed, and this film was able to confirm this, is that it sits very well in a long history of humanity that is interested in exploring. Exploring the world around us. You know, what lies on the other side of the river, what lies on the other side of the mountain, and in this particular case, what lies up in the skies. And it basically just lets the human element speak for itself, and it does so through in the image choices, in the way that it's edited. I mean, it's edited as a continuous single mission story, just comprised of many takes, 7 takes or so, and a few other little things for good measure. But it's all in the images, it's all in the editing, and it's all in the music, and it's all in the recollections that you hear from the Apollo astronauts themselves years after the fact. That for them it's still very fresh in their memories, and it's something that they still. I mean, who wouldn't think about this? So, but yeah, it really is an inspiring film. If you ever feel like you want to see if you ever feel like, you know, what has man done? Has man done anything worthwhile? Well, here it is. If you're somebody that likes to look up at the stars and to think about what's out there, what's beyond right here on Earth, and it definitely satisfies that tendency. So, I mean, really, it's a film that really speaks for itself when you really get down to it, and you just can't help but be awed by it and be hopefully be inspired by it. Doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't have to be that you become an astronaut at this point, but certainly I would hope that it would help you to pursue something worthwhile, and you know, it's great in that regard. Other little things I can talk about. I really like the title "For All Mankind." This is, of course, this is a phrase that reoccurs on the plaques on each of the landing modules. That phrase would reoccur. Like for instance, with Apollo 11, "We came in peace for all mankind." But I like it because I also understand it in a completely different context. That phrase shows up in Divine Liturgy. It's at the end of one of the prayers. It's after the bread and wine was already consecrated, as it was already transformed into the body and blood of Christ, and the priest says a prayer for the presiding bishop, and sometimes the priest continues on, or sometimes the deacon will continue on for him, praying for all of the church, everyone present, and then it ends with "and for all mankind," and the choir also responds to that, "and for all mankind." And I think it's because I understand it in that context. I'm one of those guys that would, if you send me up into space, I would be more spiritual than ever. And would probably irritate any and all atheists just because I dare to mention God and creation and so forth. But in a way, when you if you believe that God created the heavens and the earth, and if you believe that He created all things visible and invisible, when you witness another item of creation, of course you're going to feel compelled to acknowledge the Creator. I mean, it's 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 a deep belief, and I can't help but expose a deep belief when if I'm ever in that circumstance. And that's sort of the sense that you get from each of the men recounting their experiences. It was an experience that for them revealed something about themselves and revealed like who they are and what they aspire to do, both individually and collectively. So I don't know. It's just it's a very it's a wonderful film, and the fact that it all comprises of footage that was already there. Like all the elements were there. They were ever there, and it took somebody who had a desire to tell the story cinematically and artistically to give it that life. And I think it was a great service to everyone. It's to remind us that this really was, in spite of its time, in spite of the things that would have directly or indirectly pushed the Apollo missions. In the end, these were missions for the benefit of all mankind, and it gave us. I mean, the big thing that it did, starting from December 1968 when Apollo 8 reached the moon, and you had that wonderful picture, which I would say that this is probably my one minor gripe with the reissue. I'm not the biggest fan of the cover that was used in the original 2000 DVD issue. It was actually the Earthrise picture that was used, and also the title was a little bit more subtle as opposed to this. But this is like a minor gripe. It's all good. It's all good in the end. But it's seeing that Earthrise, and interestingly enough, on Christmas Day, 1968, it was the much needed perspective. And it was especially timely given what happened that year. If you think of everything that happened in that year, it was just nothing but protests, nothing but there were all kinds of. I mean, this is where you had the May 1968 protests in France. This is where you had the Prague. Well, before that, you had the Prague Spring, and then the Soviets went into Czechoslovakia. That's going to be covered in the next one. You had the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. You had riots there. MLK was assassinated then. Robert Kennedy was assassinated that year. It was just nothing but just Vietnam was going on. Greece happened the year before, but it was just nothing but devastation, war. And it just seemed like this. It seemed like the Earth was just this kettle that was just going to explode. It was just boiling over with rage. And then finally, 3 men on a little capsule make it to the moon. It's the first time that man ever reached the moon with Apollo 8. And as they're orbiting around the moon, they see the Earth rising above it, whereas we're used to seeing the moon rise from the Earth, but now we're seeing the Earth rise from the moon. And it's that much needed perspective that we are on this small little hunk of rock. We call it the Earth, and it's a precious, beautiful thing. And it's all there. Yes, all the horrors are there, but also all the beauty is there. But it just exists within that vast, seemingly infinite space. And it was, again, it was that much needed perspective. I like to think that it helped us calm down a little bit, or that there was that much needed reprieve, and it didn't feel like the whole world was subsumed with fire. And maybe that was probably the feeling. So now, obviously, I was not a child. I didn't even exist in 1968 and 1969. So for me, I never had the experience of seeing it actually unfold. I've had other moments unfold before me, but certainly not that, and certainly not July 20th, 1969. But I have to say that every time I revisit it in a serious way, I feel like I am a part of that moment, even though for me I was born long after it. But nevertheless, there's just something about being able to see man walk on the moon and succeeding is just very inspiring. It stirs the soul, and I think that's why I also call this a perfect film. Is that everything all works together beautifully, and it strikes deep. It goes beyond. I mean, it's certainly entertaining. It doesn't fail to do that, but I think more importantly, what it does is that it speaks to the soul. It says that this was a beautiful thing, a wondrous thing, a fun thing, that this happened. And it was, I mean, 24 people were just it was just 24 people, but you feel like you were a part of that they were in their own way speaking for all of us. I mean, who wouldn't toss things around when they're in low orbit, and they can finally roam around a bit? Who wouldn't play their favorite songs up there? And whether it's Merle Haggard or Berlioz, and who wouldn't skip around while surveying a valley or a crater? I mean, who wouldn't do those things? And they were able to do that. And I hope that more people see this, and I'm sure it's very easy to watch it in some way. But I hope more people see this, because what I hope is that this would inspire us to want to do more positive things. We're at a time where it does feel like we're going back to 1968, and in the worst ways, where we always riot about things, and we always complain about things, and we feel like the whole world is falling apart. But I hope that more people see this and feel that it's not just the bad stuff. It's not just, we don't have to let the fires consume us. We can fight the fires, and even that we can even go out into the beyond. And again, it may not be necessarily, oh, you become an astronaut, or oh, you work in space, but it's just that feeling that there is something more, and that you can do something more. You are of benefit and great value to others. Why not do that? Why not be that? Why waste your time on something very trivial and in the end insignificant, especially when you consider that perspective? All of your ambitions, all of your dreams, all of that are contained in this little rock that just floats around in space. And it's not to say that it isn't, I mean, it makes it sound like, oh, it doesn't really matter. It's not to diminish you, but it's to put things in perspective. And I think I don't know. You should make the most of what you have and such. And I'm sorry if it sounds a little corny in spots, but really this is a very stirring film, and it was just one of the it was a film that really needed to be made, and I'm glad that it was made. And all it took was footage that was it was already there. It was already there. It was just waiting to be put together in a compelling and moving and artistic way, a way that speaks to the soul. And I'm very grateful to Alan Reinert and also to all at NASA for doing this, and especially to those all those astronauts, and not just to the Apollo missions, but the other important major stepping stones, Mercury and Gemini, and then continuing after that with the space shuttle, and also the planetary exploration efforts. There are various of those, and also I'm grateful. The people that will continue the space story are those various businesses that are taking on space tourism and are making they're the ones that are keeping that dream alive. The dreams that for my father, the space program was a big deal to him. That's what he would remember from the '60s, more so than all the political nonsense. And so the current ventures now are fulfilling a dream of his, and I know other people his age that for them it was a dream to go into space, and they're making that more into a reality, and then I would say, okay, now I'm just really full of myself at this point, but really it's, if you haven't seen it, go see it. Go see it. It is. I think it really is that amazing. And so yeah, just go see it. All right, I got to stop before I go get all too gushy. But anyways, for all mankind, and until next time, take care.